Hey guys, so just to recap what we talked about in the last lesson, we did area of squares and rectangles. And for area of squares, we said that area is the side to the second power. And for area of rectangles, we said area equals base times height. And we were very specific in that we said that the base and the height had to form a right angle. And so that's what we talked about yesterday. Today we're going to deal with two other shapes. The first shape that we're going to talk about is the parallelogram, which you see here on your paper and in the picture. And if you look at this, if I had some scissors, I should have thought about this ahead of time. But anyways, what you could do is take this triangle right here. If I cut it out and moved it over here, it would actually fill this in so that we would no longer have a triangle over there. We would have it over here, and this would now make a rectangle. And so yesterday's formula of area equals base times height is going to be exactly the same thing for the parallelogram. So let's write that in our notes. So area equals base times height. And I'm going to abbreviate that. A equals B times H. So we're using the same formula, but super important to note, again, just like yesterday, the base and the height are going to have to form right angles. So let's take a look at the other side of this paper. So clearly we have parallelograms. So I'm going to write my formula down. Area equals B times H. So looking at this yellow parallelogram, my base is 13 feet. My height is 5 feet. Got that right angle there, so I know I'm using the right values. And 13 times 5 is 65. And then I'm going to put my units with it, feet squared. Remember, anytime we see a unit that's been squared, we know we're talking about area. All right, same thing for this next turquoise shape. Area equals base times height. So our base is 16 centimeters. Our height is 8.5 centimeters. Again, we see that right angle right there, so that's important. That lets us know that we are using the right values. So I don't know this one off the top of my head like I did the last one, so let's do some multiplication together. 6 times 5 is 30, so I'm going to carry the 3. 5 times 1 is 5, plus the 3 that I carried is 8. Now I'm going to add a 0, and then I'm going to multiply 8 times 6, which is 48. So I'm going to carry the 4. 8 times 1 is 8, plus the 4 that I carried is 12. I'm going to add, and let's see what we get. So I have 1360. I have one digit behind the decimal point. That means I'm going to have one digit behind the decimal point. So really, I can just say 136. And then keep my units as centimeters squared. So it's pretty nice. I would encourage y'all to put this on pause and let you guys try the next few problems. So I'm going to assume that you are pausing this right now. All right, you should have had enough time to work on those. So let's see how you did for number 1. So my base is 8. My height is 12. 8 times 12 is 96. So 96 yards squared. Let's take a look at number 2. My base is 11. My height is 7. So my area is 77 millimeters squared. All right, last one. Base times height. both the base and the height in this case are the same number, 14. So 14 times 14 is 196. And then keep my units, feet squared. All right, so the next couple of types of problems are still involving parallelograms. This time we are going to be missing a side. So in number 4 here, we have area equals base times height. So they've given us the area of 72. We're being asked to find the height, but that means that they gave us the base, and the base is 12. So I'm going to have 12 times h. So just like we saw yesterday, we see multiplication happening between the 12 and the h. So we're going to do the opposite of that, which is division. We're going to divide by 12 on each side. 72 divided by 12 is 6. And I need units, and those are inches. And I'm not going to square those because we only square if it's area, and this is not area. We have just solved for the height. So the height is 6 inches. Number 5, we're going to do the same thing. So for the area, we're going to plug in a 30. We don't know the base, but we do know that the height is 5. So I see multiplication. So to get rid of that, I need to do the opposite, which is division. So I'm going to divide each side by 5. 30 divided by 5 is 6, and I need my units of meters. So my base is equal to 6 meters. Last one, also a parallelogram. So area equals base times height. We've been given an area of 28 centimeters squared. We don't know the height, but we do know that the base is 7. So again, 7 and h are being multiplied together. So we're going to undo that using division. So we're dividing each side by 7. 28 divided by 7 is 4. Keep those units of centimeters. So the height is 4 centimeters. All right, now we come to a different shape. This is a rhombus. We learned about the rhombus in an earlier chapter. What we learned about a rhombus is that all 4 sides are congruent. So all 4 of those sides are going to be the same lengths. We also learned about diagonals. We learned that the diagonals of a rhombus are perpendicular. So all of these angles right here are right angles. So you can put a little box in for all of those. So we have a totally different formula for rhombus, and you might not have ever seen this one before. I doubt that you did it in middle school. So the area for a rhombus, we're gonna find the product of the diagonals, and then whatever answer we get when we define that, then we're going to chop it in half. So I'm going to abbreviate this and write area equals 1/2 times D1 times D2. Remember, product means multiplication, so I'm multiplying those 2 diagonals, diagonal number 1 and diagonal number 2, and then whatever we get, we're going to chop that in half. So pretty easy formula. We need to know the 2 diagonals in order to find out that area. So let's take a look at this first turquoise rhombus here, and I'm going to write the formula down. Area equals 1/2 times D1 times D2. So got the 1/2. Let's start with the vertical diagonal. I know that this is 5, and I know that this is 5. So that means that my entire diagonal there is a grand total of 10. Now let's do the horizontal diagonal. This is 3, and this is 3. So all the way across would be 3 plus 3, which is 6. So when you have these numbers, you can multiply them in any order that you want. I know a lot of times students don't like fractions as much as I do. So if you want, you can save the fraction for the end, and you can start by multiplying 10 times 6, which is 60. And then we can find out that 60, when we chop it in half, is 30. And we have units of meters, so we're gonna say meters squared. Just to show you that you could get the same answer if you wanted to multiply those numbers in a different order. You could do half of 10. Half of 10 is 5. And then take that answer of 5 and multiply it by 6. And we would also get 30. So you could go in any order that you want. As a matter of fact, if you had written this down and let's say you found the horizontal diagonal first and then the vertical diagonal, you could have done half of 6, which is 3, and then 3 times 10 also gives you 30. So you have a lot of ways you can multiply those numbers. You can change the order up, but the bottom line is you're still going to get the same answer. So let's take a look at this orange one. So 1/2 times diagonal 1 times diagonal 2. This picture is actually easier than the last picture because we don't have to add any numbers together. They're showing us that our entire horizontal diagonal right here is 13. And then we see that the vertical diagonal from top to bottom is 10. Now, if I were doing this, I probably would not start off by doing half of 13 because that's not going to be a nice number, if you will. 13's not even. So if I chop it in half, I'm going to end up with a decimal. So what I would do first is do 13 times 10, which is 130. And that is even. And so now when I chop it in half, I will get a nice number. And that chopped in half is 65. So 65 inches squared. Again, you could have changed your order. You could have done half of 10, which is 5, and then 5 times 13 also gives you 65. So you can change that order again. You can put it in whatever order that you'd like. So I'm going to encourage you to put this on pause and try these last two on your own while I eat a jelly bean. Red jelly beans are my favorite. Hopefully you have put this on pause and you guys have figured out the last two. So I'm going to go ahead and get started. Area equals 1/2 diagonal 1 times diagonal 2. So my two diagonals in this picture, I have one that's 8. That's the vertical diagonal. I have one that's 14. So off the top of my head, I don't know 14 times 8. I could figure it out probably pretty quickly, but I'm going to do this a different way. I'm going to do 1/2 of 8, which is 4, and then 4 times 14 is 56. So I'm going to choose to do it that way. So as you're deciding what order you want to multiply numbers, I would encourage you to look for ways that you can do numbers in your head that are easy without having to do a lot of extra work. And last one here. Writing down my formula. I would encourage you guys as you're doing these problems to write down your formula every time you do a problem for a couple reasons. Number one, it gives you a visual so you can see where you're going to plug numbers in. And secondly, the more you write them down, the more quickly, the faster you will learn them, because when you guys take your quiz, you're not going to have a formula sheet. You're going to need to know the formulas. So if you write them down every time you need to use them as you're doing homework and classwork, it'll be that much easier for you to learn those formulas for Thursday's quiz. All right, so in this case, the diagonals are the same. They're both 12. So I could do 12 times 12, which is 144. And then I could chop that in half, and I would get 72. So my area is 72 feet squared. All right, so you guys are going to get an assignment. Please work that out, and then I will answer any questions that you have tomorrow, or you can send me an email. Thank you.